Hello everyone. So here we are with the EOM2 analysis, and I'll be starting with DILR, followed by my colleagues will take you through the other sections. So here I share my presentation before we start. Yeah, here we go, my friend. Here is the screen share of the presentation. Let's get started. So I hope you have taken the test and you enjoyed this particular section. There were some tricky ones as well, and very interesting puzzles, interesting data sets were given in this particular puzzle, in this particular section. So we will let me put you at this stage of your preparation, and let me firstly categorize as to three types of people: those who have taken the test. Firstly, I congratulate you because you took the test at the early stage of your preparation if you are a beginner. And most of you could be at the intermediate stage of your preparation. Please watch EOM1 live, EOM1 analysis. So what I meant by beginner, intermediate, and advanced, very few people would be at the advanced stage of their preparation at this point in time. So often at this point in time, either you are a beginner or you would be at the intermediate stage of your preparation. So the things to be kept in mind while you are looking at DILR section. So one is the familiarity. If you are a beginner, then there would be a lack of familiarity. Although there were some simpler sets, because of the lack of familiarity, they might look quite challenging. And the second thing is the strength. If you're a beginner, then you might not have realized the strength, your own strengths, but if you're at least at the intermediate stage of your preparation, you would say that what are your strengths and what are not your strengths. Not your strengths are definitely the areas that you got to kind of work upon. What are the strengths? For some people, pure DI is a strength. For some people, the pure LR is a strength. For some people, the reasoning based DIs are a strength. So these are the three kinds of categorization that we do broadly, right? And then we have the MCQs and non-MCQ questions. If there is a set which is dominated by non-MCQs, or the entire set is of non-MCQs, that is type in the answer type. So technically, all right, so we'll avoid those kind of sets in the beginning, right? We kind of pick up those kind of sets maybe in the second round of your of our testing. We technically look at the papers from the two stages. First is we look for the most familiar sets, the sets which are of our strengths, the sets where there is a support of MCQ, because if you get an answer, if there is a reassurance that okay, this answer is matching with some number, so that gives a good confident feeling. So therefore we kind of look for the sets where there are questions dominated by MCQs as well. This is how you kind of select the sets. Once you select the sets, you kind of sequence them, which one you want to do first, right? So after sequencing, you don't do every single question on that particular set, not necessarily, because if it's a DI based, generally if there are 4 or 6 questions on that particular set, maybe half of them are easier out of 6 questions, 3 of them are nice to deal with. The other 3 can be much trickier. It may not be worth investment of your time and energy during the test, because we are all constrained by those 40 minutes for this particular section. So where do you invest those 40 minutes is important. Also, it's an energy, right? You are also investing your energy. So therefore, where you are investing your time and your talent, both make sense. So therefore, within that particular set, it's good practice to read multiple questions within the set and then try and figure out which are easy, which are medium, and which are difficult. So that would kind of make sense. So pick up the easy and medium questions by your gut feeling. Naturally, with your more experience, you can have that, you would be able to calibrate the questions. With less experience of solving, less experience of preparation, so naturally it may become a little difficult to understand which is the medium difficulty question or which is the difficult question. But with practice, I'm sure we all can improve on that. So here we go. So what were the sets to name? So this was a Venn diagram for 4. So anybody already who had some exposure to Venn diagram for 4, trust me, this was one of the sitters, in the sense the data was pretty straightforward. There were no challenges, and the good thing is all 4 questions were MCQ questions. So and hence, if anybody with the slightest idea of Venn diagram for 4 could have solved it. Therefore, when I say that for a beginner, probably Venn diagram for 4, if you're only limited to Venn diagram for 2 and 3, naturally Venn diagram for 4, drawing itself could be a challenge. Right now, forget about completing that particular set, answering these questions. The drawing itself might be a challenge. So those who know how at the intermediate stage of preparation, you would have some inclination, some understanding of not only Venn diagram for 2 and 3, you would also have Venn diagram for 4. So this is a pretty straightforward. You would have filled all those particular cells with limited amount of reasoning, and hence you would be able to get this. So I would rather say that anybody at the intermediate or advanced level of preparation, this was the sitter, right? So 4 out of 4 questions could have been done in about 7 to 8 minutes time based on your speed. Some of you might take a little longer as well, because speed can be an issue at the early stage of your preparation, because you may still have to consolidate on the concepts so that the speed would be generated. So here we go. This is one of the sets, technically round 1 or round none, in the sense, I don't even know how to draw a Venn diagram for 4, then you would have left it. So otherwise, technically, it should be a round 1 set. So then comes this another set. So where there are 2 football teams in a college, A and B, and they have played 100 matches in a given year, in a particular year. And then so there are 6 cases within this. All right, there are 6 cases. If you have identified those 6 cases, you are also given 6 hints to get about 6 equations, right? So you're getting about 5 to 6 equations. So you get 6 equations and there are 6 variables, because firstly, you understand there are 6 variables out here. And then so all the questions were non-MCQ questions. Therefore, I would say that in this particular set, this is one set typically should be taken only in the second round. Nobody should have ever touched this in the first round. At times, what happens is the games looks very interesting. But the point is, had there been some support with MCQ questions, could have been better. But here, 6 questions were there on this particular set, and all 6 were non-MCQs. So if you would have committed one logical error while doing this, the entire 6 questions might have gone wrong. So very highly likely that most of the question you end up getting wrong, right? Because there is no reaffirmation. So it costs good 10 to 12 minutes of your time. So because you tend to be extra cautious as well when it is a non-MCQ kind of question. So considering that, this must be taken only towards the end. Once you say that, okay, I finished all that I could. Now anyway, I need to plunge into some of the difficult set. You can get into this. This was one of the most difficult set for simple reason that all 6 were non-MCQ questions. There is no reaffirmation on what you are doing. So considering that, this should be definitely taken in the second round. It could have costed you about 10 to 12 minutes kind of time as well. All right, then it was followed by another set, which was a simpler one. So anybody with certain understanding of averages should have done this, because this was combination of the quant-based reasoning, we can call it, combination of a simple equation, because it was, every question had just one variable in it, right? So therefore, it's combination of simple equation and averages. So anybody, those who have done simple averages, not even the weighted averages, this was just built on the concept of simple averages and as equation, right? So considering that, so anybody with understanding of this should have, and there were 2 questions, although this set had about 6 questions, there were 2 questions where there were answer options. So you could pick up one of those particular questions, although one of them was harder, you could have picked up at least one of them, just to understand that what you are doing is making, you are doing the things in the right direction. So with that affirmation, you could have solved some of the non-MCQ questions, which were literally simple, right? Actually, there were 4 non-MCQ questions, out of which 2 of them were little sitters. After just reading and having one look at the data, anybody should have picked up those 2 questions. So therefore, I would rather say this could have been either taken up in the first round or in the second round. But this is one of the must-do kind of sets, for a simple reason that at least 3 questions out of 6 questions were quite doable. I won't say that all 6 were doable. So, but for anybody, 3 were definitely kind of doable. Right, so somebody should have picked up either in the first round or in the second round, because it's easy to understand, less data, and very easy to comprehend as well. All right, and there was a reassurance in the form of those 2 questions with MCQs. So therefore, picking of the sets was also important here. If you would have picked the right kind of sets, invested your time at the right areas, I'm sure getting the good score is not a big challenge out here. So this is followed by one of your favorite kind of sets, so where it looks like simple data with about 6 cities the person visited, which city he visited first, in what way it is ranked. So it is kind of like one of those particular sets which is inviting to solve, right? Definitely anybody with slighted understanding of logical reasoning. So this would be a kind of inviting sets, because you just have 6 cities. You have to rank those particular cities, certain conditions are given, and you have to find the order in which this particular person, Tarak, has visited these particular cities. Sure, all right, either you could have done it in the first round or in the second round based on the momentum. After you read this, you got that idea, because even before you go to those 6 conditions, there was something which was said. So if you miss already, there was something which was said. If that was understood well, the first paragraph, the second half of this first paragraph, it was understood well. You got what author is trying to communicate. Definitely you could have taken up in the first round. Otherwise, it's worth giving a shot in the second round, right? Okay, so then this was the final set. This is another inviting sets, because you can kind of make a grid. There are about there are about 4 sections, and 6 people have written this particular test. So therefore you kind of rank them 1 to 6, right, across the 4 sections. That was this particular game. This is one of those sets which you could have done a little bit, just kind of a Sudoku, where in Sudoku you fill the kind of numbers. Instead, you might end up filling here the alphabets. Probably George can be taken as G, Thomas might have been taken as T, S. So whatever, all in that particular fashion. This is one set. Anybody having certain understanding of Sudoku kind of puzzles definitely would have gone into this, because the logic remains same. There you fill digits. So here you kind of fill the letters, right? So this is one of those sets. So one should have definitely picked between 17 to 20, at least one set between 17 to 20 and 21 to 24. Had you just gone through all the sets, picked up those 3 sets that you would like to do, sure, all it would have come out. You would have got definitely a much better score for this paper. Even doing 3 out of 5 could have been a really, really good bet. When I meant 3, I didn't even mean that you have to solve 3 sets completely. Even had you done it partially, those 3 sets, invested it, that's a pretty good average effort, right? And above average, definitely had you done most of the questions from these 3 sets, definitely would have stood out. So here we go. So you will understand the scores, what I meant by this. I didn't find any set to be much easier as such. So they were either of the moderate difficulty level, some of them were time consuming, and there was one difficult because of all 6 questions being non-MCQ questions. That one on that A and B teams, so playing 100 matches in a particular year, right? So if you look at the scores, it kind of reflects. First, let us take a look at the 98 percentile, because most of the IMs tend to give call around that, right? So therefore 98 percentile is technically, we consider it as a benchmark number. So 98 percentile, even if you look at it, about 12 attempts, as I said, about 3 sets here and there, right? About 12 attempts with a score of 30 odd, about 32, should have done about 98 percentile, which is really interesting, and it's achievable. About 12 questions. Now think about it, 40 minutes of time being invested in about 3 sets to get about 12 questions. All right, it's pretty much doable. So you just have to keep calm, and then you got to select it. You need to have a game plan before you enter into the section. So had you got certain game plan and you'd have tested that game plan, I'm sure already you would have done about somewhere around 10 questions, 10 to 12 questions. I'm not saying that 12 must have been done. About 10 attempts, you could have got about 95 percentile. All right, even if you look at that, even if you look at all at 90 percentile, just about less than 10 attempts, still you would have got into the fancy figures of 90s, right? So therefore, all it's saying that, okay, 90 percentile is not a great challenge, provided you would have stayed calm and you would have looked at those kind of at least 2 sets you would have picked up. So 2 or 3 sets you kind of picked up and done partially here and there with less number of errors. So definitely, all right, you would have done some justice of getting into the 90th percentile. So which would be a good effort at this point in time. So that is from my side. So I will hand it over to Saurabh sir for the quant section. Saurabh sir, over to you.
Thank you, sir. That was for the DI section. Moving on to the quant. Before we move on, obviously, today is Holi. I hope everybody has had a safe Holi. Happy Holi. But hope it was a safe one. Moving on to the quant section. quite a balanced paper. The paper was quite balanced, no big bias towards any of the topics. We'll first look at the topic distribution, then the question mapping, how many were easy, what type of questions were easy, moderate, and difficult. And we'll look at the expected percentile and attempts. As I said, a lot of topics, quite a balanced paper. There are two questions from averages, one easy, one moderate. One question on circles, part of geometry, easy one. Functions, one question, moderate. One linear equation question, easy. One logarithm question, moderate one. There are three questions on numbers, all three were easy. Partnership question surprisingly was a difficult one this time. Partnership otherwise would be quite easy or moderate. This was difficult. One question on permutation combination, easy. Polygon, one question, moderate. Two questions on profit and loss, easy and moderate. Usually profit loss is not very difficult. One moderate question on progressions and one on quadratic equations, moderate. Three questions on ratio proportion, two easy, one moderate. One question on SICI, one moderate question on surge and indices, two easy questions on time and work, one easy question on time fleet distance. And there was one easy and one moderate question on triangles. That makes it a total of 26 questions. And 40 minutes was the time, 40 minutes like what you had in CAT 2020. So there were a total of 15 easy questions, 10 moderate questions, and only one difficult question. There was luckily no very difficult question or lengthy question. Let's look at the easy questions. One easy question was on profit and loss. Profit is given. If you sell it at 250, there's a profit, 2,500. If you sell it at 1,600, there's a loss. And the profit and loss are given in some ratio, 3:2. And you are asked what would be the selling price if you desire a 10% profit. Quite a moderate question, probably it can be solved fast also. Even if you use equations, even if you use logic, this would be quite fast. Numbers, one question was of HCF LCM. Somebody has some number of pencils, erasers, and sharpeners, and he wants to distribute among the children. Everybody should obviously have the same items. If somebody gets one pencil, everybody gets one pencil, something like that. The question was, what if everybody gets the maximum number of items? How many pencils did everybody get? That was the question. So just a simple analysis, simple application of HCF, highest common factor. One more question on numbers was the application of a raised to n plus minus b raised to n. This is divisible by what? A plus b or a minus b. So applying that, and the question was, there were four options, and the question was which of the options is divisible by 19. So we had to apply just a raised to n, b raised to n funda. Third, quite easy, was 3-digit number and reverse 3-digit number. If the reverse number is subtracted, the result is 495. So how many such numbers were possible? The only catch sometimes usually errors are made is the fact that we forget that the reverse number is also a 3-digit number. So that was one small thing where people might have made a mistake. Otherwise, quite easy. Linear equations. The data said that the father's age is 5 times his son's age. After some year, the father's age would be twice his son's age. And then you are asked compare the ages of the son, the future age and the present age. How many times is it? So quite an easy one, even if you use linear equations. Averages. In a class, there were 108 students. Their average was given. There were 38 toppers. I don't know why 38, but there were 38 toppers. And their average was also given. The question was, what is the average of the others? Again, if you use a logical way out, it would be quite fast. An easy question. Ratio proportions, another easy question. 3 friends had marbles. They were distributed among them and the ratio was given. Then there's a hypothetical situation. If the marbles had been distributed by colors, a second ratio is given. The ratio would be this. Then they actually redistribute the marbles by weight. And then the third ratio is given. And then you are asked, what is the minimum possible number of marbles with one of them? Probably the first one. So just very basic fundamentals of ratio proportion. Another was ratio proportion is even simpler one. Incomes and expenditure ratios of husband and wife are given. And you are simply asked, who saves more? The husband, the wife, who saves more? So very simple logical question. SICI question may not be very easy if you use equations. Logical method was quite good. Compound interest for 3 years, all 3 years collectively was given. I believe it was 80,800, 80,080. And then 20% was the rate of interest. And you are asked, find the 4th year's interest. So with the logical method, this would have been easy. Time, speed, distance, one question. Quite an easy time this time. Speeds of 2 people are given. I think it was 24 and 36. If they moved in the same direction, they would meet in some amount of time. That time is given. And your question is, if they moved in opposite direction towards each other, then what would be the time? So it was just the application of relative speed. Permutation combination. Direct equation based question. Maybe you discussed this equation in your class. Distribution of 20 identical chocolates. Identical was the key part. Identical chocolates among 5 boys. Boys are always distinct. So it was identical, distinct receivers. Direct application of the equation and you would have an answer. And sometimes you get answers just by the unit digit. So you don't even actually carry out the entire multiplication. Time and work, there were questions. 3 people can do a job in the days that were given. They all start together. A leaves 5 days after the work start. That means he only works for 5 days. And C leaves 5 days before the completion of the work. So what was the total number of days? Simple application of the classroom type of questions that you do. Another very similar classroom type of a question. There is work worth 1,440 rupees. 2 people can do it in 24 and 36 days individually, respectively. But with the help of the third person, they completed the work in 12 days. So what should be the third person's share? Probably a question very similar to what you have done in your classroom. There was one easy question on circles. Just the direct application of the secant rule. From a point P outside the circle, 2 secants are drawn, PAB and PCD. The only problem was the equation is in a different format. The lengths given were in a different format. So that might tempt you to make a mistake. Just a little bit of an alertness and you would have got this right. You can't miss these questions. Triangles. 3 sides are given and you are asked to find the end radius. You remember 2 equations. Probably there are 5 given equations and maybe we need to discuss 1 or 2 more. You just equate 2 equations and you have the end radius. Direct, you can even remember the direct equation for the in radius given the three sides. Easy question. Let's see the moderate ones. One question on profit loss was a moderate question. Moderate because there was a little bit of a calculation to be done. Two free items were given with 5, and a customer bargains and gets 20% discount. The markup is 138%. 138%. And because of this high markup, there is still a profit of 108 rupees. So what is the CP? The cost price had to be calculated. Quite good if you do it logically. Quadratic equations, again a standard question. Two people trying to solve, or two people are given the task to solve a quadratic equation. Both of them copy the equation obviously first. So one makes a mistake in copying down the B part, the standard B part. And the second makes a mistake of copying down the C part. Both of them turn out with their own set of roots, and we are asked the correct roots. What are the correct roots? So taking one person's sum and the other person's product, and you would have the correct roots. Surds and indices. 4 pairs of numbers are given in the format root A plus root B. All 4, of course, were even in the options. And then you are asked which pair is the largest. Just one more thing was needed: observation skills. In all of the 4 options, if you would see, or the pairs given, you would see that A plus B remains constant. So one observation and you would have an answer probably very fast. Logarithm. A number is defined n as log 4 plus log 5 plus log 6 till log 10. And then you are asked n is between which integers. So is n between 3 and 4, 4 and 5, 5 and 6, 6 and 7, something like that. And quite easy question. Maybe moderate because it would take a little time to solve and get that number, multiply and get those numbers. One question on progressions. 2 APs are given. And how many common terms are there between the 2 APs? Sorry, not just terms, but how many common terms? One AP had 200 terms. The second AP had 160 terms. And you are asked how many terms are common between the 2 APs. Luckily, as usual, the first common term was visible on your screen. So you didn't have to actually calculate the first common term. You could see it on the screen and then solve the rest of it. Ratio and proportion. A little moderate, a little lengthy. 2 mixtures X and Y are made from 3 chemicals ABC. And both obviously are in different ratios. ABC are mixed in a particular ratio to get the mixture X. ABC are mixed in a different ratio to get the mixture Y. Now X and Y are mixed to get the percentage of A, 33.3333, 33 1/3% concentration of A. Then the amount of A is doubled by adding pure A. And then you're asked what is the concentration of chemical C in that mixture. A little lengthy, maybe calculating, getting proper numbers in the ratios. And this I would probably call an easy question rather than moderate. Averages, 5 numbers are there. The data said the average of 5 numbers was given. Just 5 numbers, not more. The median value was given. You know the middle value. Out of the 5, you know 1. 2, and the question said there's only one mode, and that mode was given. That means you know 3 numbers out of the 5. And then you're asked what is the least possible value of any one of them. So all you have to do was set the other 2 and try to minimize the least number. Functions. An interesting function if you understood the function. otherwise a little lengthy to solve. Given a function was defined, I think it was 1 plus x upon x plus 1 upon x minus 1. And you were asked, find f inverse of 1.6. So if you understood that function, it was probably very easy. Otherwise moderate, yes, you would have to calculate, do the reverse calculation. This was a little lengthy and maybe even difficult, maybe a little more difficult than moderate. There was a right angle triangle with sides 7, 24, 25 that was given to you. The right angle is trisected. A was the right angle vertex and the 90 degrees is trisected, which gives you 30, 30, 30. So AX and AY are two sides, two legs drawn to the hypotenuse such that they trisect the angle 90 degrees. And then you are asked, what is the ratio AX, AY? Quite an interesting question. Once you see it, it will be quite easy. Standard regular hexagon question. You join 4 midpoints of a regular hexagon to form a rectangle. What is the area of that rectangle? If you have gone through geometry, you have done a bit of hard work, this would be rather easy than moderate. Yes, if you have to calculate things, it's a moderate question. Maybe even a little lengthy calculations if you have to start from scratch. And now the last difficult or time-consuming question from partnership. As I said, surprisingly, this was a difficult question. Two people, A and B, start a partnership. A manages the firm, or he is taking care of the daily day-to-day work. So he gets 20% of the profit first. Now there are three situations. First, of course, is the actual situation. He gets 20% of the profit and the 80%, remaining 80% is divided in the ratio of the investments as usual. That was the usual case. And that's what happened. Then there were two hypothetical cases. The first case said, okay, if everything was divided equally, that means they got 50-50, half-half profit. If the profit is divided equally, half-half, then A would lose 50,000 rupees. Okay. And instead of half-half, if they shared the entire profit in the ratio of their investment, then A would further lose 50,000, another 50,000. That means total 1 lakh loss from the original situation. So based on that, now you were to find what is the total profit. You can form equations and do that. Maybe a very unusual question, so I'm putting it as difficult. And actually it was a little time consuming if you formed equations. If you see the written solution, it is with equations. But the video explanation will tell you the logical way out. So don't forget to see the video explanations. So there's a logical way out for some of the questions, which is usually a little faster. So these were the 26 questions. Now there was only 40 minutes given to you instead of the usual 1 hour because of the COVID situation. There was only 40-minute question probably last year. So this paper is in line with that. There were 15 easy questions. Ideally, I would expect everybody to solve each of these 15. Maybe you miss out one. And maybe you miss out a few more because of the 40-minute instead of 60-minute. You are a little under pressure to complete a little more. So I would still expect you to do 11 out of these 15. And 3 of the moderate ones. There were 10 moderate. I would expect you to do some of them. Maybe one of them was your strength. So maybe you will solve those 3. And of course, otherwise you would have solved 3 more of the easier ones, whatever be your strength, according to your strengths. And I would not expect anybody to solve this partnership question. I hope nobody had tried to solve that during the test. Luckily, there was no very difficult question. So I would expect A 98 percentile. This is what I'm expecting for a 98 percentile. I would expect a 98 percentiler to have at least 14 attempts. 14 attempts is what I am targeting for a 98 percentiler, keeping 40 minutes in mind. So 14 attempts, because most of these were easy and moderate, I would not expect a lot of errors this time. Just one error is permitted, not more than one I would expect. So 13 correct, one incorrect would give you a score of 38. So I'm expecting a 38 score for 98 percentile. As sir had previously just said, 98 is the benchmark. We start with the talks on 98 because most of the IIMs would focus on that part at least. So 98 percentile is at 38 marks. 100 percentile could be achieved at 57, obviously even above 57. So 57 plus would be for 100 percentile, and 99 percentile I would expect at 48 marks. Because it was a little easier paper, marks would shoot up. People who are fast, people who have worked very hard would actually crack the paper. So 48 marks. Coming below 98, 95 percentile can be probably achieved at somewhere around 34, with 90 percentile being at 29 marks and 80 percentile at 20 marks. 20 would at least give you still 80 percentile. So if you can crack the easier ones, I'm sure you would be able to achieve your targets, at least the easy and the moderate ones. So that marks the analysis of the quant section. I would request Ajit sir to take over the verbal part from here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So we are back to analysis of the verbal section. Happy Holi, everyone. My colleagues have already said. We just hope that after missing out on Holi, almost missing out on Holi last year, this year you guys had a good Holi. Wherever you are, you're still wearing a mask. You're getting vaccinated as and when your time comes. And let's get started. So, what did we have in the verbal section? We had a verbal section that was it as colorful as the Holi that we expected? We had a perfect CAT 2020 format verbal section, 26 questions, 40 minutes, 18 questions dedicated to reading comprehension, which had 2 RCs with 5 questions each, 2 RCs with 4 questions each, out of context 2 questions, rearranging jumbled sentences 3 questions, summary 3 questions, overall difficulty level moderate to difficult. I don't think I will call it easy. Reason, I've always said, I kept saying this to people who were there giving the CAT last year, that when the time decreases, the difficulty level of the questions has to be proportionately adjusted. A lot of questions in today's paper were not really so difficult. Honestly, I would rate them moderate, but then I also have to see the time allocated to the questions. And when the time decreases, the perceived difficulty of the questions has to automatically increase. That is the logic. So what did we have? We had passages which were more or less all of them contemporary. If you've been reading newspapers, you would not find these passages very difficult, except one, and luckily that happened. That passage came at the end. So the first passage was the one on SEBI and independent directors, 450 words approximately, with 4 questions. Definitely a passage you should have attempted. 4 questions, 3 of them I'll call them applied information. So all of those questions were based on the scenario or the description in the passage. You have to figure out which of the given cases relates with whatever is mentioned in the passage. These questions are typically called applied information questions. And As I see it, everything that was easy in RCs was in this passage. 2 easy questions, 2 moderate questions. This RC totally deserved 7 minutes, and you should have scored at least 3 out of 4 correct on this passage. Then came, so there was an escalating level of difficulty in today's RCs. The first one was the best. The second was not so bad, not so good, but then it wasn't the worst on the set. Then you will have the third one coming after this, which was again like not the worst out of the set, but it was definitely not as easy as the second one. So easiest, easy to moderate, moderate to difficult, and the bomb passage. That's how we arranged your passages today. RC2, 5 questions. Out of those, there was one. A scan and verify question means you just have to go back to the passage, look up the information, and come back and answer the question on the basis of whatever you could find or you could not find in the passage. That's what a scan and verify question is. A lot of people call them detail-based questions. I am fine with whatever you call them as long as you have the correct approach. So 5 questions. First one, inference. They can scan and verify. A strengthen question, a weaken question, another inference question. That was the sequence. The third passage, copper price surge post the pandemic. Again, taken from a very recent article. 5 questions again. This basically saved you. If you had invested into this passage, you would really have all the courage or all the clarity that you need to avoid passage number 4. Just 300 to 350 words, 5 questions. Yes, there was a contextual meaning question also. What does the author mean by this? Not a very easy question per se, because the question actually tested you on your understanding of a phrase in economic terms. There was information in the passage. There was some information in the passage about what the phrase means or what that sentence means, but you had to have some economic background or some reading background to actually mark this question confidently. Also, because this is question number 14. So by the time people reach question number 14, unless you are really, really good with your selection skills, by the time you reach question number 14, you look at the clock and you are staring at around 28 or 29 minutes gone, which means there is a default stress, which is why, like I said earlier, this is not a difficult question. Neither question number 12 nor question number 14. In a utopian scenario, these would not be difficult questions. If CAT gave you 60 minutes for the verbal section, these questions again would not be difficult. They would be moderate. But when CAT gives you only 40 minutes for the verbal section, oh, these are difficult questions because they require some time and some uninterrupted focus. And obviously, you don't want to not give the effort that is required to get all the questions correct in a particular passage. That brought me to gender inequality and economic performance. Oh God. Look at that difficulty level. Difficult, moderate. 3 questions based on critical reasoning, 1 question based on your ability to scan through the passage, but then scan what? Look up what? This passage would definitely appeal to people who have been reading this kind of stuff, 1, and people who ended up on this passage clearly because they did not want to start with some other passage. And now that you are stuck with this passage, you want to give it some effort. And so yes, if someone had taken RC4, the 4th passage before the other passages, maybe you would not have found it so difficult because you were very driven and very motivated to give your best effort and read it properly. When I was analyzing this paper, because a part of the analysis at Endeavor is that every faculty member has to solve the paper. So when I was solving this paper, because I don't have the constraints of getting a very high score, I just went in the sequence, and by the time I reached passage number 4, and when I started reading it after attempting the first 3 passages and getting everything correct, when I started reading passage 4, I realized that this passage is going to be very, very testing. So anyways, 15, 16, 17, 18, those 4 questions, a lot of you, if you could jump, would have jumped over this passage and come to the parajumbles. There were 3 of them One of them was easy. In fact, it was very, very easy. Two of them, I would rate them as moderate. Why moderate? Because I anticipate that a lot of you would not have started with parajumpers. Had you started with parajumpers, both the questions that you see labeled moderate here would have felt easy. But no, so many of you would have started with passages, which is why in parajumbles you would have spent on an average maybe around 1.5 to 1.5 minutes. That's what makes them moderate. Had you given both of these questions, 19 and 21, had you given them 2 to 2.5 minutes, you would not have found them moderate, you would have found them easy. Summary questions, almost like a bomb. Like there was nothing easy about summaries today. Even the question number 23 that I have marked moderate, for a lot of you, that would be difficult. Reason, the choices almost everywhere were close choices. You would want to look at everything that you know about summaries, that a particular summary answer choice is incorrect because it is logically incorrect, or a particular answer is incorrect because it does not does not present complete information, or a particular answer choice is incorrect because it derives an inference which is not required. All of it got tested today. I mean, if you were not paying a lot of attention in reading the answer choices, you would just find them way too similar to each other. So yes, that was a bomb. Like for a lot of you who are targeting a 98 percentile on this test, you could have left all three summary questions. But then many of you would not have left those summary questions. Why? Because the first passage talked about transcontinental cables and Elon Musk. These are exactly the kind of traps you do not want to fall into on your test. The more you fall into such traps, you read transcontinental cables, oh, this is easy to read. And then you read Elon Musk and like, I'm going to attempt it. When the choices tell you that the answer choices are, when the choices tell you that the question is very tricky, take my word for it, just quit. Quit because there is something else coming up. Out of context questions, wonderful questions. For me, both of them were very easy. The aerosol cans one, as well as the mining controversy one, these two you should have gotten correct. So the paper breakup is this: 6 easy questions, 12 moderate questions, 8 difficult questions. I have always been a fairly lazy person. I would rather invest all of my time in those easy questions than invest my time into difficult questions. Some of you would have an inverse ratio. You would have attempted only 2 to 3 questions out of easy, but you would have attempted 5 to 6 out of difficult ones. That tells you you have 7 months. You have exactly 7 months. And in these 7 months, not 7 months. In the next 4 or 5 months, you have to get your selection strategy in place, which is going to be driven by your awareness of strengths and weaknesses, which is further dependent on how well do you solve whatever material you are solving. So the next 1.5 months, focus on material solving, get your strengths and weaknesses in place so that you don't make the kind of mistakes that you made today. So my expectation for a 98 percentile, I would have wanted you people to maybe attempt only around 16 questions and get me a 36. This is what things would look like. 20 questions with 17 correct would put you at a 100 percentile, a score of 47 and above. Is it possible to get 20 attempts and 17 correct? I think that would be a much better scenario than you trying to get me 23 attempts and 17 correct, or a worst case 23 attempts and 16 correct. That's not what I want. 2017 seems like a much preferable scenario here. Gives you enough time. 40 minutes, 20 questions. That is the best thing that you can expect from this format of CAT. 2 minutes per question. So you start with 20. Look at how the curve falls. From 20 attempts with 17 correct, people have come down to 12 attempts with 8 correct, and they are still standing at 80%. That is what it is. From 20 to 12, you are increasing your average time per question from 2 minutes per question to almost 4 minutes per question, almost. On the other hand, your net investment in the first scenario for 100 percentiler, your net investment stands at, to get a score of 100 percentile, you would have given approximately 2.5 minutes for every correct answer. That is the net investment. But that time, 2.5 minutes for each correct answer, absolutely doubles and you fall from 100 to 80. These numbers are going to be very, very important for you as you plan things going ahead over the next 7 months. So this would be our scores. As you can see, as Saurabh sir also said, Quant was the easiest section. Hopefully Quant will remain the easiest section because so many CAT takers live in the fear of Quant. So let's hope Quant remains easy going ahead also. As for the verbal ability and reading comprehension section, moderate, you can call it difficult, you can call it moderate, depending on the preparation level. DILR, it has been a sort of a trend on CAT for the last few years. DILR has rarely been easy. Again, you want to take the tests and you want to look at previous year's scores also, that by the time you approach the next open mock, you are settled inside your head on what to anticipate. The clearer your expectations, the easier it will be for you to score. The less you will be disappointed when you are done with the test and you see your score on the screen. Everybody targeting a 99 plus percentile on CAT 2021. Between now and the next Endeavor open mock that we conduct, all you have to do is work on your strengths, work on your preparation, work on your analysis, and make sure that by the time you reach Endeavor open mock 3, you know how to get a 90 percentile. I'm not even asking for a 98. If you can get me a very clear and well calculated 90 percentile by Endeavor open mock 3, we are pretty confident over the next 4 to 5 to 6 months, you can zoom from 90 to 99 plus. Start at a lower benchmark, work consistently, get your high ambitions. That is the definition of Endeavor. Thank you so much for your time. We wish you all a good and a safe time ahead. Like I said, stay safe, wear a mask, take lots of care of yourself and of everybody else. We will see you again